So these are the four stages. And we had also seen that the digital filter is an algorithm. So you have to write, maybe you have to write a program for a digital filter, and this algorithm can be implemented as a subroutine, or maybe if you are using hardware descriptor languages such as VHDL or Verilog, etc., maybe you can implement the algorithm as a hardware also on an FPGA or maybe on an ASIC, etc. So these are the four steps. The approximation, realization, study of arithmetic errors due to finite precision, and finally you have the implementation. So in the previous class, we had discussed each of the four steps in detail. And now we had also seen that this process of realization is easier than the approximation process, and therefore we will discuss the process of realization first. So before actually starting the discussion of the third module, we are going to see a bit of the fifth module. We will discuss how the structures are implemented for FAR filters. We will also discuss for IAR filters, because certain structures for IAR filters, because these sections are very highly related. So we will discuss some structures for a few basic structures for IAR filters as well. And then we will come back to our approximation and accounting for finite precision errors, and then final implementation. So we will discuss the third module after seeing a bit of the fifth module. So as we have seen, the output of a linear time invariant system, Y of n, is a function of the present and past inputs, and it can also be a function of the present and past inputs, and it can also be a function of past outputs. So past inputs, present and past inputs. So x of n is the present input, x of n minus 1, x of n minus 2, etc. up to x of n minus m are the past inputs, and y of n minus 1, y of n minus 2, y of n minus 3, etc. are the past outputs. So y of n depends on present and past inputs, and also on past outputs of the system. So I will now use the whiteboard and try to illustrate this. So you have a system. So this system has got, maybe this system can be represented by h of n. Here you have x of n, and here you have y of n. And now what we are saying is that y of n depends on present and past input. So x of n, x of n minus 1, n minus 1, etc. And also on the past outputs. So y of n minus 1, y of n minus 2, etc. through the filter coefficients, etc. So let me write as an example. I can maybe write x of y of n is equal to. So I can write y of n is equal to a function of x of n y of n is equal to a function of x of n. Maybe I can write this as x of n plus 2x of n minus 1 plus 3x of n minus 2 plus etc. up to, I will use the last term as, for example, x of n minus 5, or n minus n means 0. So I will just write x of n minus. So instead of these dotted lines, I'll just write plus 4 x of n minus 3 plus 2 y of n minus 1 plus 3 y of n minus 2. So the present output depends on the present input, the past inputs up to the input sample x of n minus 3 and the past two output samples, that is y of n minus 1 and y of n minus 2. Okay, so maybe here n is the discretized time variable. So n maybe I can write as n. N represents nts, where n stands for a time index represented by n into ts, ts being the sampling interval. Now, so let me think of this as a speech processing system. So this is a speech processing system. Let us assume that this is a speech processing system. So which means you are going to do this in real time. So this filtering will be a real time. So this is a real time filter. So my question to you is, can I have a filter? Is it possible to have a filter for real time processing where y of n can be written as x of n plus 2x of n plus 1 plus y of n plus 1. Can I have a filter like this? I will request one of you to answer this. Joel Benny. Joel class, you are there in the class, right? Joel Benny. Joel, are you there in the class? So I'll pick someone else. Kyriakos.
Sir.
Lakshmi, you have to check whether all these people are actually in the class itself. Or maybe they just turned on their Google Meet and then they left the scene. So maybe we'll have to have customized questions for each and everyone. Okay, Kyriakos.
Sir.
Okay, so is this possible? Y of n is equal to x of n plus 2 into x of n plus 1. What is x of n plus 1? X of n, n being your current sample, so x of n plus 1 should be the next sample, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that is a sample that has not yet come. So n is your current dimension. Plus y of n plus 1. What is y of n plus 1?
Next sample, that too.
It is the next output sample, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now my question was, you are processing in time. The domain is time domain. So can you implement this equation?
No.
Why? Because it violates some property which you call as causality, right?
Yes, sir.
So this cannot be implemented. So this violates causality. So you cannot implement this as because it violates causality.
Yes, sir.
So we'll go back to the presentation. So you can write b of y of n. So we will restrict our discussions to real time for the time being. So y of n is equal to, you can maybe write it as b0 into x of n plus b1 into x of n minus 1 plus b2 into x of n minus 2 plus etc. to bm into x of n minus m minus, so I put a minus sign here. So minus a1 y n minus 1 minus a2 y of n minus 2 minus a3 y of n minus 3 etc. up to minus an y of n minus n. I have taken this negative sign inside the bracket. That's it. Is that understood? So I have talked about constants b0, b1, b2 etc. up to bm for weighting the present input and the past input samples, and the present output depends on the past input sample up to the mth past input sample, so which is x of n minus n, as well as the past output samples up to the nth past output sample, which is y of n minus n, through the constants b0, b1, b2 etc. up to bn, and a minus a1 minus a2 etc. up to minus an. So you can compare this with the equation, that is the example that we had seen. So here we can write B0. So B0 would be equal to 1, B1 would be equal to 2, B2 would be equal to 3, and B3 would be equal to 4. And what about this? Minus A1 is equal to 2. So A1 is equal to minus 2, and A2 is equal to minus 3. So this is the equation that you have here. So we will write the general equation. So the general equation would be y of n is equal to y of n is equal to function of x of n. So y of n is equal to b0 x of n plus b1 x of n minus 1 plus etc. up to you have the sample bm x of n minus m minus, I'll just write this row, minus a1 y of n minus 1 minus a2 y of n minus 2 plus etc. up to a n y of n minus n. What we'll do is we will now group the terms containing y of n. So y of n plus a1 y of n minus 1 plus etc. up to a n y of n minus n can be written as b0 x of n plus etc. up to bm x of n minus m. Now I would like you to take Z transforms throughout. So we will try to find out the system function of this system. That's the transfer function for the system, and then we will try to write down the system function. So let us take Z transform throughout. So if you take Z transform throughout, now you can write y of Z plus a1 z raised to minus 1 y of z from the time shifting property plus etc. up to a n z raised to minus n y of z, therefore can be written as b naught into x of z plus etc. up to bm into z raised to minus m into x of z. Okay, so that's the general equation. So which means I can write h of z is equal to y of z by x of z. H of z is equal to y of z by x of z, which should give you the system function or the transfer function of the system that we are going to consider here. So let us return the PowerPoint presentation. Now, so therefore you can write y of z by x of z would be equal to b0 plus b1 z raised to minus 1. So that we can write as, so if you can look at this presentation, so y of z into 1 plus a1 z raised to minus 1 plus etc. up to a n z raised to minus n is equal to x of z into b naught plus b1 z raised to minus 1 plus etc. up to bm z raised to minus n. So therefore we will be able to write h of z is equal to y of z by x of z, which is given by a ratio of polynomials in z. So the numerator polynomial being b0 plus b1 z raised to minus 1 plus b2 z raised to minus 2 plus etc. up to bm z raised to minus n, which we write in a summation form as sigma n equal to 0 to m bn z raised to minus n divided by 1 plus a1 z raised to minus 1 plus a2 z raised to minus 2 plus etc. to n z raised to minus n, which we write as 1 plus sigma n equal to 1 to m an z raised to minus 1. See that the summation in the numerator is from 0 to m, and the summation in the denominator is from 1 to m. 1 to m, and you have a 1 plus this term is here. So when you have this n is equal to 0, you will see that this is an FIR filter, so which we had discussed towards the end of the previous class. When you have n equal to 0, you call this as an FIR filter. This will be an FIR filter, and when n is not equal to 0, then this will be an IER filter. So that we had seen in the previous class. So let me go back to the whiteboard again. So as we had seen in the previous class, towards the end of the previous class, we have seen that if you have a polynomial h of z as a polynomial in z raised to minus 1. Say for example, if I write this as 1 plus 2 z raised to minus 1 plus 3 z raised to minus 2, then it may also means that if you take h of n is this function 1, 2, 3, where this is the original, which is written down by just by noting that you can write h of z is equal to sigma n equal to 0 to infinity, or sigma n equal to 0 to some value. So I'll write this as n or m h of n z raised to minus n. H of n z raised to minus. Now I'll just write this as sigma n equal to 0 to infinity, because I'm looking at a causal filter. As we have seen, we are looking at real-time filters, so we are looking at causal filters. So there is no value for n from h of n from minus infinity to minus 1. So this is our filter 1, 2, 3. So which means how many samples are there in a filter? Kyriakos, how many samples are there in the filter?
Sir, 3.
3 samples. So is it an IR filter or an FIR filter?
FIR.
So this is an FIR filter because there are finite number of samples in the impulse response. So h of n is 1, 2, 3, right? For you have seen another example where if you write h of z is equal to maybe 1 by 1 minus 2 z raised to minus 1. So this is an h of z. So we have seen how to write this in terms of an impulse response by actually performing the long division as 1 by 1 minus 2 z raised to minus 1. So this would be 1. So the next time would be, so this difference would be 2 z raised to minus 1. So this would be 1 plus 2 z raised to minus 1. So this would be 2 z raised to minus 1 minus 4 z raised to minus 2. So the next time would be 4 z raised to minus 2. So this would be plus 4 z raised to minus 2 plus etc. So likewise it goes. So now if you compare the equations, if you compare with this equation, then for this case you will be able to write h of n is equal to, so for this case h of n would be equal to, what would be h of n? 1, 2, 4, etc. like this. So now Kyriakos, again, is it an FIR filter or an IR filter? What do you have here?
IIR.
An IR filter. So this we had discussed in the previous class. So when you can write h of z as a polynomial in z, if you write h of z as a polynomial in z, then you say that h of z, if h of z is written as a polynomial in z raised to minus 1, because you are looking at really causal filters, then you say that h of z represents an FIR filter. When h of z is a ratio of polynomials in z, like for example, if it's b of z by a of z, then this becomes an IER filter. If it's b of z by a of z, it becomes an IER filter. So good. So this is an IER filter. So now we'll go back to the presentation again. Now let us consider an FIR filter of length m. So this is very important. What I'm going to mention next, you have to remember throughout this subject, which is you are now introducing the order of a filter, and we will see why this word order of a filter is important. And later we will relate the order of the filter to the number of memory elements required to implement the filter. To realize the filter, the number of memory elements required to realize the filter, realization as well as implementation. So consider an FIR filter of length m. FIR filter of length m. Length m will mean you have filter samples from B0, B1, B2, etc. up to Bm minus 1. So if you have a length m, it is B0, B1, B2, etc. up to Bm minus 1. Now, for this filter of length m, the order of the filter is equal to m minus 1, which means the output is a function of the present input and up to the m minus 1th delayed version of the present input. That is the up to the m minus 1th past input. So now you look at the order of the filter as the number of delays. You look at the order of the filter as the number of delays. So let us look at this equation. So again, let us go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Whiteboard. So this equation you can now write as, this is an equation of the form equal to sigma, so which means h of z you can write as h of z is equal to sigma n is equal to 0 to 2 of B0 or Bn z raised to minus n. Is that clear? So this is B0, where so therefore B0 is equal to 1. What is B2? Sorry, B1 is equal to 2. What is B2? B2 is equal to 3. B2 is equal to 3. Right? So B0 equal to 1, B2 equal to B2 is equal to 3. Now 1 plus 2 is raised to minus 1. So which means I have some function. You have to implement some function which is x of z. Is going through an h of z and they should give you a y of z. So you require two delay elements here. So I will call this as z raised to minus 1. Because z raised to minus 1 represents a delay. See, if you write z raised to minus 1 into x of z, its inverse z transform is x of n minus 1, which we had seen in the previous semester. So x of n minus 1 has an z transform given by z raised to minus 1 into x of z. So if I represent this input as x of n, so this input maybe I can represent as x of n. So here I have x of n. In the z domain I have x of z. So here what I have here is z raised to minus 1 into x of z. Now if I again delay this by z raised to minus 1. So each z raised to minus 1 is a delay element. So here I will have, this will be x of n minus 1 and this is x of n minus 2. And here this should be z raised to minus 2 into x of z. Is that understood? So h of z is equal to y of z by x of z, implying y of z is equal to x of z into h of z. And in our particular example, this is equal to x of z plus 2z raised to minus 1 into x of z plus 3z raised to minus 2 into x of z. Is it understood? So x of z plus 2z raised to minus 1 into x of z plus 3z raised to minus 2 into x of z. So here I have what is known as a delay chain. So this I can call maybe as a, I will call this as a delay chain. Delay chain, or it's also called as a delay line. Delay chain or a delay line. So here I have x of n. It's delayed, so I have x of n minus 1. Here it's again delayed, so I have x of n minus 2. And I need to add x of z plus 2 times. So this is to be multiplied by 2. 2 times of x of z. And this is to be multiplied by 3. So this is 3 times z raised to minus 2 into x of z, and this has to be added up. And this will be your y of z. Now, is this understood? So all we have done is we have drawn a delay line or a delay chain. In this particular example, you require up to z raised to minus 2, so we will require 2 delay elements. And you take tabs from the delay line. So you take a tab from the delay line and weight it by the appropriate value of the filter impulse response coefficient, and then you sum up all the values. This should give you y of z. So this is what you get. This is a structure for implementing your FIR filter. So since you are taking tabs from the delay chain, we call this structure as a tabbed delay line structure. So we have different names for this structure, which we'll see as we progress. So you can call this as a tabbed delay line structure, or it's also known as a transversal delay line structure. Transversal indicates perpendicularity. So you take tabs perpendicular to the direction of the delay chain. So transversal delay line or the tabbed delay line. So you call this as the tabbed delay line filter or the transversal delay line filter. So these are some common names. There are other names also which we'll see as we progress. So this is how this is implemented. So this is how the structure is implemented. So the important takeaway from this slide is that if you consider an FIR filter of length m, then it means that you require m-1 delays for this filter, and the order of the filter is the number of delays which we call as m-1. Order of the filter is number of delays. So order of this FIR filter of length m is m-1. What is the order of an FIR filter of length 100? Arvind? What is the order of an FIR filter of length 100?
99. Hello.
Arvind, are you there?
Hello. Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
Your voice is very feeble. I don't know whether it's an issue with my computer. Arvind, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what is the order of an FIR filter of length 100?
99.
99. So very simple, very straightforward. Order of an FIR filter indicates the number of delay elements. It therefore indicates the number of memory locations needed to implement the filter. Okay, so once you get the filter, you can immediately write down the impulse response as follows. So that we have seen. So with x of n is equal to delta n, you can write h of n is equal to y of n is equal to sigma k equal to 0 to minus 1 vk delta n minus k, which is equal to bn. So you can very easily write down what are the filter coefficients. So the bn coefficients, the set of bn directly gives you the impulse response filter coefficients. So impulse response has m samples. Now this is also known as all zero filters, also known as feed forward filters, because signal flows only in one direction. There is no feedback from the output side to the input, because the present output does not depend on the previous values of the output. So signal moves only forward. So we call this as feed forward filters. It's also known as non-recursive filters or transversal filters. And the most popular name, as you have seen, is known as the tabbed delay line filter. Tabbed delay line filter. Now, this is a very important observation. digital FIR filters cannot be derived from the analog filters. The reason being that rational analog filters, which when you say rational, you say that the order of the analog filter is an integer. So the first order Butterworth filter, for example, you can look at the second order Butterworth, third order Butterworth, fourth order Butterworth, etc. So if you look at the impulse response of such filters, then you see that the impulse response of such filters will have infinite duration. So in general, this is true for all kinds of analog filters that exist in practice. Analog filters that exist in practice will have impulse responses that go up to infinity. So which means you cannot get digital FIR filters by approximating the analog filters, because analog filters have infinite duration. Analog filters have infinite duration for the impulse response. So digital FIR filters cannot be derived from analog filters, as rational analog filters cannot have finite impulse response. Now, if that is the case, then why should you consider FIR filters at all? That could be a very important question. The answer being, these are the important advantages for FIR filters. One is that they are inherently stable. FIR filters are inherently stable, which means that FIR filters are always stable, which we are going to see shortly. So we will see very shortly that FIR filters are inherently, that is always stable. So the stability is inbuilt. You don't have to bother about making stable FIR filters. When you design an FIR filter, it is automatically stable. The second important advantage is that they can be designed to have linear phase. So this linear phase is a very important property, which we will see in the next class. Linear phase is a very important property for systems. If the systems do not have linear phase, then the signals will suffer a distortion, which is known as a phase distortion, which we will see in the next class. The third is that there is great flexibility in shaping the magnitude response. So you might require certain, maybe some kind of shape for the magnitude response. So that also can be manipulated in an FIR filter design, whereas it is very difficult to shape the magnitude response for an IR filter. And the last one is that they are very easy and convenient to implement. Okay, so we'll look at the last one first, and then we'll look at the other advantages. So let us examine why they are easy and convenient to implement. That is because you can implement the convolution of two finite duration sequences via a circular convolution by appropriately zero padding and extending the signal before doing circular convolution. And the circular convolution can be done using FFT. So therefore, it means that this FIR filtering can be done by means of fast Fourier transform algorithm. So the implementation of FIR filters could be very fast, can be implemented in the frequency domain very easily by using FFT algorithms. So this is how you can do FIR filter implementation with the DFTs, so which can be implemented using FFTs. So FIR filter can be implemented as this finite duration convolution. Since HFN and XFN are finite duration sequences, their convolution is also finite in duration, and the length being equal to L plus M minus 1. So instead of P, we have taken this to be M. So the length of the signal is L, length of the filter to be equal to M. So now consider N greater than or equal to L plus M minus 1 and pad the sequences HFN and XFN with zeros to increase the length to N, and perform the endpoint DFT in the frequency domain. You can write y of k is equal to h of k into x of k. So, which means if you compute the inverse discrete Fourier transform, you can get back y of n. So, which means you can implement a FIR filter using FFT algorithm. This is what we had discussed in the first module, second module itself, when we had seen implementation of FFT algorithms. FIR filters can be implemented. FIR filtering can be implemented very fast by using your FFT algorithm. So let us go back to our whiteboard and see an example for that. So a typical example could be something like this. So I can have a signal x of n. So x of n having 100 samples. So X of n having let's say 1000 samples, or 10, I'll put this as 1000 samples. So 1000 samples, so which means L is equal to 1000, and H of n typically is much shorter than X of n. So H of n would be, let's say, 10 samples. So which means P is equal to 10. And you know the length of the filtered sequence would be 1000 plus 10 minus 1, so which is 1009, right? 1009. Is that clear? So we will see how to implement this using, let us say, Radix 2 FFT. So what we will do is, for Radix 2, you require the length to be a power of 2. So the higher power, which is greater than 1009, higher number, which is a power of 2 greater than 1009, is 1024. 1024, which is equal to 2 raised to 10. 1024 is equal to 2 raised to 10. So what we will do is, we will put X of n. So we will have X of n, and after that we will put many zeros. So how many zeros we have to consider? We will put 24 zeros. So this will make the total length equal to 1024. So total length is equal to 1024. And for the second, you have an H of n, which has got only 10 samples. So what we'll do is, we will put 1014, that is 1014 zeros, and make the length equal to 1024. Is that clear? And then we will take an X of k, which you can compute using an FFT. Then you compute H of k, which again you can compute using an FFT. Then you multiply H of k into X of k. So X of k into H of k. And then you take the I FFT, which will give you, this is Y of k, and you take the I FFT. So I FFT should give you Y of n. And now this seems to be a rather cumbersome way, because the length of the filter is only 10 and you have to put many zeros, and you have to compute a 1024 point FFT for this. So anyhow, however, you see that this can be implemented by using FFT algorithms. Okay, so this can be implemented by using FFT. So FIR filter can be implemented by using FFT. Now, we had also seen that FIR filters have some fundamental advantages. The first advantage is that they are inherently stable. So we will also look at this advantage. So we have seen that they are easy and convenient to implement. So it can be implemented via this linear filtering structure. So sometimes if you might not even have to do a DFT if the length of the FIR filter is not too large. So maybe in such cases, implementing it directly using a convolution operator could be easier than doing the FFT. But if the length of the filter is large, then maybe you can try FFT. However, now let us look at why these are inherently stable. So let us look at why they are inherently stable. Now, if I have a system H of Z, for which I use the Z domain to mark the poles and zeros. So I have an H of Z, which is given by B naught plus B1 Z raised to minus 1 plus B2 Z raised to minus 2 plus etc. up to Bm Z raised to minus m, which I am going to rearrange as follows. I will write this as equal to B0. I will multiply this by Z raised to m throughout and divide also by Z raised to m, so that you basically get the same function. So this is B naught Z raised to m plus B1 Z raised to m minus 1 plus etc. up to Bn divided by Z raised to m. Is this understood? So B naught Z raised to m plus B1 Z raised to m minus 1 plus etc. up to Bn by Z raised to m. So this has got the this has got the representation. This is a representation in the form n of z by d of z, where n of z is the numerator polynomial and d of z is the denominator polynomial. Now, someone has to tell me how to check the stability of the system. So, Meenakshi, you have studied this in signals and systems in the previous semester. Tell me how the stability of the system can be checked.
Sir, for Z transforms, last class we saw that it has to include the unit circle.
Exactly. So, where should you have the zeros? The region of convergence will not definitely be including any zeros. So the region of convergence will not be including any zeros. So the region of convergence will exclude all zeros. If you have a zero, you will not include any poles. So if you have a pole somewhere, then the region of convergence would be outside the pole for a causal sequence. So you are looking at a causal filter here. So the region of convergence should be outside the outermost pole. Now, where do you have the poles? And this region of convergence should include what is known as the unit circle. So region of convergence should include the unit circle. So this should include the unit circle. So this should include the unit circle. So radius is equal to 1. So where do you have the poles of this h of z located? Where are the poles of h of z located? Poles are the roots of the denominator polynomial. Poles being the roots of the denominator polynomial. Zeros being the roots of the numerator polynomial. Where are the roots of the denominator polynomial? Meenakshi, you can continue.
The roots of the denominator will be the pole. They will be outside the region of convergence.
No. For this example, the denominator polynomial is z raised to m. So to find the roots of this denominator polynomial, you have to write z raised to m equal to 0, right?
0. Yes,
so what does it mean? Where z is therefore the m roots of 0. So what are the roots of 0? They are all zeros, right?
Origin, yeah.
So where are the roots located? The roots are located at the origin. So where are the poles of this system located? All the poles of the system are located at the origin, right? So
yes,
which is inside the unit circle, right? The origin is at the center of everything. So this is inside the unit circle. So therefore, what do you conclude? What is the stability of the system?
It's not stable. It has to be.
Is it stable or unstable?
Unstable.
Now you have made that mistake here. Why do you say it's unstable? What is the condition for stability? Condition for stability is that the region of convergence should include the unit circle. So if the unit circle, say if you have a region of convergence that includes the unit circle, then the system is stable, right? And the region of convergence cannot include the poles, because at the poles the system is unstable. So if I put z equal to 0, 0 is a pole. If I put z equal to 0, now this becomes a division by 0. So when you have a division by 0, this becomes infinity and this becomes unstable. So at z equal to 0, the system is not stable. Is that understood?
Yes, sir.
At that point, you have a pole. At that point, the system, the output does not converge. So you have a pole. And therefore, the region of convergence is the entire z domain except z equal to 0. Is that understood?
Oh, okay, sir.
So ROC is the entire z plane. So I suggest everyone go through the concepts of z transform once again. So ROC is the entire z domain except z equal to 0.
0.
So what does it mean? What is the region of convergence? It's the entire z domain except z equal to 0. So does it include the unit circle? Which is the only point that it does not include. It's Z equal to
Only
0.
0.
So is this point
It
included?
includes-
This is included.
Yes.
Okay, so all the points in the unit circle therefore falls in the region of convergence.
Convergence.
So is the system stable or unstable?
Stable.
System is therefore stable. So which means you can definitely say that H of Z is a stable filter if it's an FIR filter. Okay, H of Z is a stable filter if it's an FIR filter. Now let us look at another example. So if I write H of Z is equal to 1 by 1 minus A Z raised to minus 1. Now please tell me what is the ROC? Meenakshi, you can, or Lakshmi, can you answer this? What will be the ROC?
Sir,
ROC will be outside the
Z
outermost
inverse
pole. What is
greater
where we
than
have the
equal
pole
to
here? So
A.
this you can write as Z by Z minus A. Where is the pole?
Z greater than equal to A.
No, where is the pole? I am looking at the pole.
Z equal to A.
Z equal to A. So the pole is Z equal to A.
Yeah.
Is Z equal to A. So what does it mean? The region of convergence is all Z for modulus of Z greater than
Greater than or
modulus of A.
modulus of A.
Understood?
Yeah.
So when is it stable? This is stable
When-
if this region of convergence includes the
Includes the
unit circle.
Yeah.
So which means you need to have A, that is modulus of A, to be less than 1. Is it understood?
Yes.
Okay. So what about 1 by 1 minus 2 Z raised to minus 1? If H of Z is equal to 1 by 1 minus 2 Z raised to minus 1, is the filter stable?
You have to again look at the Z.
No, you have to look at the poles. Where are the poles
Greater than
located?
two.
Pole is located at Z equal to?
No, it's not stable because
It's
2
not
is not
stable
less
because
than
the
1.
pole is located at Z equal to 2.
Yeah.
So if I say 1 by 1 minus 1 by 2 Z raised to minus 1. Is it stable?
Yes. Because
Now this
half
is stable, right? Because
is stable.
the region of convergence is mod Z greater than 1 by 2 and therefore it includes the unit circle. Now, what does it mean? It means that you cannot say that all IR filters are stable. To look at the stability of IR filters, you have to find out where the poles of the IR filter are located. Say, for example, if I have 1 by 1 minus 2 Z raised to minus 1 into 1 minus 0.5 Z raised to minus 1. What is the region of convergence of this filter? Can you tell me what is the ROC for this filter?
0.5 and 2.
ROC?
Modulus
No, I am not able to hear. Can you repeat that again?
Sir, modulus of Z will lie between 0.5
No.
and 0.2
No, I'm looking at a
at the
causal
pole.
sequence. That's a right-sided sequence. So it will be outside the outermost pole. Where do you have the poles? The poles are at Z equal to 2 and Z equal to 0.5. Is that clear? So the first pole is at Z equal to 2. So I'll call this as Z1 and the second as Z2. So Z1 is 2, Z2 is equal to 0.5. So this is the origin. So 0.5 could be here and 2 would be here. So which is the outermost pole?
2.
Outermost pole is 2. So the region of convergence cannot include the poles. Region of convergence cannot include the poles. So therefore, it should not include Z equal to 2, which means you don't have to bother about this Z2 equal to 0.5 because this is the outermost pole. The region of convergence is outside this, and you have this unit circle only here. So which means the ROC does not include the unit circle.
So unstable.
So this is not stable. So FIR filters are always stable. IER filters are not always stable. They are stable. They are conditionally stable. So you have to look at the location of the poles to find out the stability of the IER filters. So even though you call FIR filters as all zero filters, it does not mean that FIR filters do not have any poles. It only means that all the poles of the FIR filter are at the origin. Is that understood? All poles of the FIR filter are at the origin. So all poles of the FIR filter at the origin. So we have seen that they are inherently stable, and we have seen that they are easy and convenient to implement, and also that they can be implemented very using FFT, and this implementation method is often very fast. Okay. Now we will look at FIR digital filter structures. So actually I had drawn an FIR digital filter structure earlier. So this will include 3 basic units. The first unit is a multiply. So here this is being multiplied by a constant beta. So this is the multiplier, and then you will have an adder, and then you will have the unit delay element, and the FIR digital filter structure will be a combination of this multiply, adder, and delay structure. So as here, the structure is shown here. So here you have x of n. It's delayed, so this will be x of n minus 1. This is again delayed, this is x of n minus 2. This again delayed, so this is x of n minus 3. And you know that this in the z domain is z raised to minus 1, so we will just replace this by z raised to minus 1. This is z raised to minus 1, z raised to minus 1. And you take tabs from the delay chain, so you call this as a tabbed delay line structure. So this is what we had drawn out here. This we call as a tabbed delay line structure. So this is a block diagram representation of the FIR digital filter, as we had seen. So let me have this example here, and I look at a block diagram representation here. So we have a filter H of Z. A filter H of Z is equal to V0 plus V1 Z raised to minus 1 plus V2 Z raised to minus 2 plus V3 Z raised to minus 3. So this is our filter. So I will choose to draw the filter like this. So delay line like this. So in our example, the delay line was shown as a vertical line. So we will draw a horizontal line instead for our example, because that's easier to draw for me. That's it. So I have an x of n. So it has to be delayed by an z raised to minus 1, which I show as a block. So I will write z raised to minus 1, which is a unit delay. And then again it's delayed by z raised to minus 1. So this is again shown as a block, and this is delayed by z raised to minus 1. I have 3 delay elements as per the above equation. So here if I have x of n, this would be x of n minus 1, n minus 2, and x of n minus 3. This is x of n minus 3. So in the z domain, this is x of z. This is z raised to minus 1, x of z. And this is z raised to minus 2, x of z. And finally, this is z raised to minus 3, x of z. And you take tabs as follows. So this is multiplied by V0. So here I have a tab, V0. And here this I will multiply by the tab V1, and this is multiplied by V2. So here I have V3, so it's multiplied by V3, and then you have to add all those. So this adder, I will put this as an adder. So this is one adder. I have an adder here. This is an adder. So this I can write as y of n. This is what we call as the block diagram representation. Block diagram representation of the filter. So block diagram representation of the filter. Now there is a simpler form to represent this filter, which is known as the signal flow graph representation. where it can be simplified and represented like this. It's much easier. So instead of all these, we'll draw a line here. So this, instead of drawing a block diagram, I'll just write this as z raised to minus 1. So indicates that there is a delay element here. So again, I have an z raised to minus 1. This is again an z raised to minus 1. So I have 3 delay elements. And now, instead of multiplying, I will just write a B0 here. So this will indicate that it's being multiplied by B0. I'll write B0 here. And here I will take a tab and then just write B1 here. Here I will write B2. And here I will write B3. And I will just, instead of adding, and just draw it like this. So here I have summing nodes. So instead of representing it by using blocks, I will represent by using nodes. So this is my filter. So this is the signal flow graph of my filter. So here I have what is known as a delay line or a delay chain. So delay line bar delay chain. And I take tabs from the delay chain like this, and these tabs are added together by it. So it's easy to understand that this entire structure can be written as a Python or a, in your case, as an Octave program or as a MATLAB program or as a C program, whatever. So you can very easily implement a program for this using some basic programming syntax. So you usually are implementing this structure. So V0 into XFN plus V1 XFN minus n plus V2 XFN minus 2 plus V3 XFN minus 3. So this implementation is fairly straightforward. So this is known as the signal flow graph. This structure is called as the signal flow graph, which is more commonly used. So we'll, from now onwards, we'll mostly use only the signal flow graph. Okay. So this is therefore the block diagram representation, and this is known as the, this is the block diagram representation, and this is known as the signal flow graph representation. This is the block diagram, and this is the signal flow graph. Is that understood? And now, this we also call as the direct form. So there are other names as we had mentioned for the this kind of implementation of the FIR filter structure, this kind of realization of the FIR filter structure. And this realized structure is known as the direct form structure, or the tabbed delay line structure, or the transversal structure. So there are several names for this: direct form, tabbed delay line structure, or the transversal structure. You take tabs from the delay line, which is also known as a delay chain. Okay, and now this is something that might not actually be required as per your curriculum, but it's very instructive. Let us look at what is the time delay to implement this entire digital filter structure. Time delay, what we are looking at is, if I have a sample here, what is the time delay in this structure for the output corresponding to this sample to appear? Is it understood? I am giving some input here, and corresponding to that input, you should have an output. But this structure is not going to respond instantaneously. Why? Because we have a multiplication here. So that multiplication will take some time. You have an addition here. Again a multiplication here, that will take some time. And again you have an addition here. Here you have a multiplication, so that also will take some time. So as you have seen, if you give an input here, if you are assuming that you have the previous inputs here, so you have x of n, you have x of n minus 1 here, you have x of n minus 2 here. So you have to first of all multiply this by a multiplier. maybe all these multiplications will take place in parallel. So B0 into x of n and B1 into x of n minus 1 and B2 into x of n minus 2 can take place in parallel if there are three parallel units. And then you have to add this B0 into x of n minus 1 plus B1 into x of n minus 1. So that will require one addition. And then you also have to add this to B2 into x of n minus 2. So that will take another addition. So let us look at the critical path. Critical path is called as the longest path in the signal flow graph. So this longest path the longest path includes all the arithmetic units. And if you have multiple paths in a signal flow graph, you look at the longest path which contains the maximum number of arithmetic units. So here you have a multiplier. So this is one multiplier. Here you require an addition. And here you require an addition. So we have seen that these multiplications can occur in parallel. So this is one multiplication. Once you get this, you have to add these two samples, these two values. So you require one addition. And this also has to be added to this. So you require two additions. So what is the total number of multiplications required? In the critical path, the longest path, in the longest path, the total number of multiplications is one multiplier and two additions. I hope this is clear. If this is not clear, you can interrupt me and ask. Critical path is the longest path in the signal flow graph. By longest path, you look at the path having the maximum number of complex multiplications and complex additions. In this particular case, maximum number of units. So here you have a multiplier. You have seen that A into x of n and B into x of n minus 1 and C into x of n minus 2 are three multiplications that can occur in parallel. So if you have parallel processing units. So this A into x of n has to be added with B into x of n minus 1. So you require an addition here. And this entire thing has to be added to C into x of n minus 2. So this requires another addition. So what is the minimum time delay to complete this? Maximum time delay to complete this operation. The time delay to complete this operation will correspond to time required for doing this multiplication and time required for doing these two additions. Is that understood? So the critical path, which is the longest path in the signal flow graph, by which we mean the path in the signal flow graph that includes the maximum number of arithmetic units, indicates the minimum time required for processing a new sample. So, which means that if you have a sample here x of n, to process the sample as per the signal flow graph, you will require the time for one multiplication and time for two additions at least. So time for one multiplication and time for two additions. So the critical path determines the minimum time required for processing a new sample, which means that if you have an x of n here, this output will appear only after time for one multiplier and time for two additions. And this therefore indicates that before you apply the next sample, the processing of the previous sample has to be completed, which means the next sample can be applied only after Tm plus 2Ta, where Tm is the time taken by the multiplier and Ta is the time taken by the adder. So, which also means that the sampling interval has to be greater than or equal to 2m plus 2Ta. Is this understood? Is this understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is very critical.
Sir, but this is for the critical path, no? So, but in total there will be three multipliers, no?
In total, there are
whole
three multipliers. In total, there are three multipliers, but we have parallel units doing all the three multipliers. So,
Okay.
because you see that this A into x of n is independent from B into x of n minus n. So, you don't require, it means that if you have x of n here, it means that you have x of n minus 1 here and x of n minus 2 here. Is that clear?
Yes,
So
sir.
these are three memory locations. You have a memory location where you have x of n. You have the previous memory location where you have x of n minus 1. And you have the previous memory location you have where you have x of n minus 2. And you can also, it's like this. So if I draw the memory location kind of implementation, I can maybe make this whole thing much easier. So for this case, I only require 3 samples for this particular example. So I can represent this using 3 memory locations. So I have 3 memory locations where in the first memory location I have x of n. This is the previous memory location where I have x of n minus 1. And this is the previous memory location where this is x of n minus 2. So I can assume that something is being pushed through this q. So I have a q. Q is QUE. I have a q here. So x of n is being pushed through this q. And I have x of n here. So when the new sample comes, the previous sample is pushed downwards. Likewise. So this is multiplied by V0. This is multiplied by V1. And this is multiplied by V2. So here I have V2, here I have V1, and here I have V0. So is that understood? These 3 multiplications can occur in parallel.
Okay, sir.
Right. So all the 3 multiplications can occur in parallel. So so you look at the path in the signal flow graph. When you say the path, you have to avoid all the memory elements. So which means you have to avoid all the delay chains. So avoid any delay lines in the path and look at the path in the signal flow graph. So here you see that there is only one path. Sometimes in the signal flow graphs, you can have multiple paths. So you actually don't need to look at signal flow graphs with multiple paths in our subject at least. This becomes important when we look at the VLSI implementation of the DSP algorithm. So anyhow, you see that the single path here, which is actually the longest path, if you have multiple paths, you have to look at the path with the maximum number of arithmetic units. So how many arithmetic units are there? 1 multiplier, 1 adder, and 1 adder. So which means 1 multiplier and 2 additions. So which means if you have a sample here x of n, you get the output sample corresponding to this input sample only after this minimum time of 1 multiplication and 1 addition. So which means the next sample can come only after 1 multiplication and 2 addition, the time corresponding to 1 multiplication and 2 addition. So that is what we have written here. Critical path determines the minimum time required for processing a new sample. The sampling period for our example is given by Ts greater than or equal to Tm plus 2Ta, where Tm is a time taken by a multiplier and Ta is a time taken by the adder. Is it understood?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So therefore, sampling interval is Ts greater than or equal to Tm plus 2Ta. So what is therefore the sampling frequency? If you say that the sampling interval should be Ts greater than or equal to Tm plus 2Ta, it means that the sampling frequency Fs should be less than or equal to 1 by Tm plus 2Ta. 1 by Tm plus 2Ta. So which means the critical path decides the sampling frequency. Sampling frequency cannot be greater than 1 by 2m plus 2Ta for our example. So this structure, which we called as the direct form structure or the tapped delay line structure or the transversal structure, can be used only when this equation can be satisfied. You cannot have a sampling frequency higher than this. So sometimes you might want to have a higher sampling frequency, for which we also look at another kind of a structure, which is called as the data broadcast structure. Now, this is a signal flow graph. You have seen signal flow graphs before in the second module. When we drew the signal flow graph for the decimation time FFT and decimation frequency FFT, you had multiple input, multiple output signal flow graphs. How many inputs do you have for this signal flow graph? Arvind, etra inputs under the signal flow graph?
Hello.
How many inputs are there?
One input.
And how many outputs are there?
One output.
One output. So we call this as a single input, single output signal flow graph. Single input, single output signal flow graph. Now, you have seen how to transpose a signal flow graph. How will you transpose a signal flow graph? Arvind, you can continue. How will you transpose a signal flow graph? Module 2.
We can change the arrows.
Reverse the
direction
direction
of
of all
arrows.
the arrows and interchange the input and output.
And output.
Okay. Now, the transposing theorem or the transposition theorem states that reversing the direction of all the edges in a given signal, in a given single input, single output signal flow graph, and interchanging the input and output ports preserves the functionality of the system. So you basically have the same structure, same signal, same system. If you transpose a single input, single output signal flow graph. So we will see that. How can we transpose a data broadcast structure? So this is your, how can you transpose what is known as the tabbed delay name structure, which is also known as a direct form, or it's also known as a transversal structure. When you transpose that, you get what is known as the data broadcast structure. So let us see how the data broadcast structure is evolved. So this is your delay chain, and you take tabs from the delay chain. So the tabs are A, B, and C. You add this, so this is Y of n, this is X of n. This is your direct form, or a tabbed delay line, or transversal delay line. And to take the transpose of this structure, what you have to do is reverse the direction of all the arrows. So here you had an arrow, you'll put an arrow like this. This arrow will become like this. Likewise, all the arrows are reversed, and then interchange the input and the output. X of n becomes here, and Y of n comes here. Okay. So this is X of n, and this is Y of n. So what we'll do is we'll just flip this vertically and horizontally, so that we can now write this in this form. So now I have chosen to indicate this using block diagrams. So here, this is X of n. See the previous example, X of n multiplication by C, B, A. So X of n, C, B, A, and C delayed by Z raised to minus 1, C delayed by Z raised to minus 1, Z raised to minus 1. So this is the structure. So here I have something like this. So here, these are the multipliers. The triangular structures are the multipliers, and these are your adders. Now look at the critical path for this example. Critical path for this example. Which is the critical path? The longest path, which should avoid all the delay chains. There is in fact only one path here. This is the critical path. Now, how many elements are there in the critical path? How many arithmetic elements are there? This is one multiplication.
2.
And this is one addition. So critical path is Tm plus Ta. So the critical path is therefore lesser than that for the direct form or for the tabbed delay line. Is that understood? Tm plus Ta. Critical path is lesser than that of the direct form or the tabbed delay line. So what is the advantage? There is a slight advantage for this structure. What is the advantage? What is the advantage?
So we can reduce the
You can
time.
reduce the critical.
Sampling
The
time.
critical path is reduced. So what is the advantage in reducing the critical path? You can have a slightly larger
Reduce the delay.
sampling frequency. So understood, because the next sample can appear Tm plus Ta seconds after one sample has appeared. In earlier case, it was Tm plus 2T. So you are reduced by one adder, time required for one adder. So this might not be significant, but still you have a slight advantage. So you can maybe say you have a slight advantage. Okay, so I will have to conclude conclude today's session by looking at a very simple example. So I will look at an IAR filter and see how this can be implemented as in the direct form. So let me look at an IAR structure. In the next class, we will look at, so whatever structures that we have seen, I will write down the structures that we have seen. The first structure that we have seen is the direct form structure, also known as the tabbed delay line structure or the transversal structure. And then we had transposed this direct form. So we'll call this as the transposed direct form. And we had also called this by another name. What is that? What is the name that we had used? Meenakshi, what is the name that we had used for this structure?
Sir, data
broadcast structure.
broadcast structure.
Now, why is it called a data broadcast structure? Why is it called a data broadcast structure? You can make a guess why it is called a data broadcast structure. Earlier, you had seen that this is called a tabbed delay line structure because you are taking tabs from the delay line. Now, why do you call this structure as a data broadcast structure? So it is because you have a data here, XFN. So this is your data line. Now, instead of a tabbed delay line, you have what is known as a data line. And this data is broadcasted to all the 3 points simultaneously. Is it understood? It's broadcast to all the multipliers simultaneously. So this is called as the data broadcast structure. Tabbed delay line structure or the data broadcast structure. The transversal direct form structure or the data broadcast structure. So I will just rub this off and I will end today's session by